I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give before the committee shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
So the first you heard of this, or you claim that you understood this, was 2007, when Joyce Thacker says that she prepared, and this is confirmed by evidence which we heard in private from James Senior, who was head of Risky Business at the time, prepared a report on risky business, which was a funding report, which was specifically for you. And apparently that report included 100 cases.
The first report I received was the 13th of June 2007.
Yes.
And that report...
So how can you claim that in 2010, when you resigned, you weren't aware of the scale of child sexual exploitation if you received a report in 2007?
I received a report in 2007. I don't recall it indicating the scale of child sexual exploitation at that time.
So 100 cases isn't a worry?
What I did with the report was I endorsed the actions that were being recommended by the officers. That's very clear. I also referred it to the Children's Scrutiny Committee.
I know the actions
and
that
I also
you took.
asked for a seminar to be held for all members.
A seminar
in 2007.
was a good response to child sexual exploitation.
No, I endorsed the professional judgment of the officers that wrote the report.
How were you selected as the Police and Crime Commissioner in 2012 after you had resigned in 2010 from your position at the borough due to the child abuse scandal? Why is it that you were selected to stand in the Labour interest at that time?
Well, just to address the last point first, I didn't resign in 2010 because of any child abuse scandal. I resigned in 2010 because of a Paul Ofsted report, which had got nothing to do with CSE. I then subsequently served on the police authority for 2 years and then submitted my application to the Labour Party along with many other individuals of the Labour Party and went through a rigorous selection process which resulted in me receiving the majority of ballots.
Now, isn't there an organisation of police and crime commissioners called the Association, the APCC, the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners?
Yes.
And you're part of that, aren't you?
Yes.
Did you have an office of responsibility within that organisation, an area of interest?
Indeed, yes.
What was it?
I actually sit on a number of committees representing the APCC. One is the Home Office Task Force on Sexual Violence to Children and Vulnerable Adults. Another is the HMIC Performance Management Group, and the other one is the National Police Air Service.
So despite your resignation from your cabinet position at Rotherham in 2010, you're selected to stand in 2012 as the Police and Crime Commissioner, and then whilst Police and Crime Commissioner you are selected to have responsibility for child violence and exploitation amongst the PCCs. Is that right? And are you still holding that position now?
Yes.
Well, isn't that an outrage, Mr. Wright? Isn't it a disgrace that you are currently responsible amongst all the Police and Crime Commissioners for the sort of area that we're examining now as this committee, child abuse and exploitation, which took place at a horrific scale in the Rotherham area?
Chairman, any working group requires people with some knowledge and experience of the area that is in hand.
Yes, and you have some knowledge and experience of the matter. You're remembering that much, Mr. Wright. Now, how did you get selected for that position? Did you put yourself up for it? Did someone select you for it? How did you get yourself into that position?
I put my name forward.
You put your name forward. And was it supported by anyone?
I can only assume that it was endorsed by the APCC.
Well, there are 40-odd police and crime commissioners. If somebody's interested in road traffic or if somebody's interested in terrorism, anti-terrorism matters, they might put their name up forward for those areas. You put your name forward for the child abuse and exploitation area.
Yes, there's two representatives. There's myself from South Yorkshire and there's the Commissioner for Humberside.
Did your party have any interest in that? Because I understand that there's one Conservative and one Labour for most of these areas.
That's right.
So did your party have a concern in your selection in that area?
Yes.
So they supported you for that. When did you go on to that position?
That was around this time last year.
Has the Labour Party instructed you to resign from that position as you've been... You've been
Order, Mr.
You have been removed as holding the Labour whip, I understand. But have you, as you hold the position with responsibility for child exploitation amongst the police and crime commissioners, thanks to Labour support, don't you think you ought to resign from that as well?
Chairman, I'm there to represent the people of South Yorkshire as well as the APCC, and I've been supported to sit on a range of committees like every other police and crime commissioner. I uphold that responsibility and I attend those meetings and I endeavour to impart any information that I can.
What exactly would it take for you to resign, Mr. Wright? Don't answer that question. Can I just ask one other brief thing, Mr. Vaz, please? I think you mentioned that MPs had contacted you or a MP had contacted you offering support. Is that right?
Several, yeah.
Who?
I won't share that information, that's private.
Mr. Wright, just to remind you, that you are on
I
oath.
should say, I didn't know anything about the scale of the problem, and then on the other hand say, I'd double the amount of money that went to risky business. I mean, those two things...
Entirely compatible.
Well, they're not, they're contradictory.
Well, I don't see that.
If you didn't know about the scale of the problem, why did you double the money?
Because the report came to me in 2008 with a set of officer recommendations. I wasn't satisfied that enough consideration had been given to the additional demand, and I asked for further analysis and for a report to be brought back. That analysis took place. The report was brought back in November 2008, and at that stage then, based on that analysis, I endorsed the officer recommendations and increased the budget to £110,000.
So if you were taking it so seriously, why did you say to Andrew Norfolk and to the reporter who has done more than anybody else to in the media to expose all of this, why did you accuse him when he asked you about this in 2012? Why did you say to him, why are you picking on Rotherham?
I didn't actually use those words. What I said was, this is a very broad problem for the whole country, and I hope that your piece will show some balance.
Well, he's attributed a direct quote to you, why are you picking on Rotherham? You said that's not true. You didn't say that.
When I read the article, I was quite cross at being misquoted.
Okay. I'm told that actually as far back as... I want to go back to this event at Risky Business, because that girl says that well, you claimed last year that you didn't meet any sex grooming victims to learn of their experiences during this whole period. That's what you told the committee last year. But this woman says that she met you at the event of Risky Business, and she says, I'm taking it personally, I made him a mug of tea that day. We were telling him how it became normal for us, that we complained and nobody had done anything, that in the end we accepted it because it became a way of life. Now these are her words. She says, this is a quote from her, I told Shaun Wright what I had to do to 3 Pakistani men in the back of the car. Names were named. He acted shocked, but we never saw him again. Are you really denying that level of detail, that happened?
I'm quite surprised that Mr. Austin, if I'd had that conversation, I'm pretty sure I would have remembered it.
Well, I've spoken to people who tell me that in addition to that girl, there were people, well, at least one person who was present at that barbecue who is prepared to swear that you were there.
I never denied that I didn't visit the International Centre. I don't recall when I did. I do recall that I visited the International Centre on at least one occasion, and I don't recall...
Did you go to the barbecue? Do you remember that?
I don't recall the barbecue now.
What event was it then?
Pardon?
What event was it when you went to Risky Business?
I think there was a report about the future of the International Centre and the sustainability of it. It's a very large council building and the council were looking for some savings.
Well, you see, the people connected with Risky Business told me they had a series of events and they invited, people like you, council officials, people involved in this issue in Rotherham. They said there are a whole series of events to which people like in those positions were invited. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're telling, and at which they met girls with whom they were working. Now, if you're saying you didn't go to that, you must be one of the. I mean, to be honest, I can't believe it. If all these other people went to a series of events like that, why wouldn't you have gone during the whole period that you were in charge of children's services?
I said I don't recall going along to that event.
Look, come on.
Excuse me, I said I don't recall going along to the event, and I don't recall that conversation taking place.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
The minute someone says, I don't recall, nobody believes them, I'm afraid, because it's a way of not answering the question.
It's the honest answer.
Thank you, Mr.
Isn't the reason
Austin.
that you're not resigning is not because your love of duty, but your love of the salary?
Absolute nonsense.
Wouldn't you agree that you're a busted flush, you're a dead PCC walking, no one will take you seriously in future, you will have no influence? What's the point of continuing?
I've already outlined the reason for that, Mr. Flynn. It's because I've set in train what I stood for election to do, and I'm going to see that through.
Can I tell you that having been here 26 years, having served on thousands of meetings of Select Committee, you are the least credible witness I've ever come across. I don't believe what you're saying. If you'd like to give some indication, when you talked about the MP supporting you, I'd love to see some evidence of that. You don't mean MPs just writing in and saying, sending a friendly message, but MPs, you're telling us, have asked you to continue in office. Is that true?
I've received messages of support from MPs, yes.
No, that's what my question is. How many MPs have asked you to continue in office?
I haven't had any MPs ask me to continue in office.
No.
I've had messages of support from MPs.
Well, you get friendly messages. You've been around for a long time. I'm sure your pals will send you a friendly message saying they're there, don't take it to heart. But there's no support for you except your own love of your salary. Isn't that true? That's the only reason you're carrying on.
That's absolutely not the case, Mr. Flynn.
Well, I listen here fairly.
I've spent 25 years in a range of voluntary roles as a school governor, as a magistrate, in a variety of different unpaid roles.
I blush at my own party. I've been a member of this party for 3 times as long as you. And I'm rather ashamed of the fact that I've shared a party with you. And I think what you've revealed yourself to be today is a charlatan who's in love with office, in love with the salary, and you're a disgrace. And you might well bring down the office that you hold, because there's no way of getting rid of police and crime commissioners, and you'll be quoted as an example of why the whole process of appointing police and crime committees is a terrible mistake.
It is the unanimous view of this committee that you should resign immediately. We believe that public confidence in the role of the PCC is of critical importance, and we don't believe that you command the confidence of the public, bearing in mind those organisations who work with you who've said that you should resign. For your own sense, you mentioned your family and how tough it's been for them in the last 2 weeks. For your own sense of honour, if you believe that that exists, then you should do so immediately. I will be writing to the Home Secretary to ask her to look at the legislation on PCCs, because there isn't any at the moment, to see if there can be a possibility of emergency legislation or an amendment to deal with a situation such as yours, because it's unsatisfactory in our view that someone should be able to say to the public who elected them, I'm just carrying on, no matter the stacks of evidence that we have heard that calls into question your evidence to us today, which we find entirely unconvincing. And that's why, and I can't remember this ever happening from a select committee in terms of a public official who's been elected before, that we call for your immediate resignation. Order, order.